What's up, everybody? Thank you for clicking on the link. This is our Boogie, and this is my review of Underground Season 2, Episode 8, honey, entitled Auld, Acquaintance. Yes, it was so much going on in this episode. I was biting my nails from beginning to end. If we thought last week's episode was something fierce, this week took the cake. Everybody on it just about was gangster, honey. And everything that I had pretty much saw coming to pass came to pass in this episode. Anyway, let's get started. When the episode first comes on, there's Daniel, that character played by Bokeem Woodbine. As usual, at the beginning of the episode, they show him, and he's at his regular job as a stonemason. Well, I noticed that he's fumbling around and he's dropping his tools and everything, and I'm thinking something is strange. What's going on here? So then as the camera zooms in on his face, you begin to notice that there is burn scarring around his eyes. And his eyes are red, and it's obvious that he cannot see very well. So those slave catchers, or the slave masters that caught him teaching the other slaves how to read, it's obvious that as part of his punishment, they have literally blinded him. He's been burned and blinded. And I hope whatever they've done, I hope it's not permanent, but poor Daniel. He is having a hard time for us not to know who he is or why he's there. Anyway, I feel bad for him, but they did this to punish him. You know, they were very cruel to slaves back in those days, and especially if they caught them reading. A lot of times they were actually killed when they did stuff like that. But I just feel so bad for him, and yet we don't even know what his purpose is on this show. Okay, so then they show Kato. Kato was sneaking in to Patty's trailer while she was asleep late one night. And as soon as he walked up in there, Patty kind of jumped up. She apparently sleeps with a loaded and cocked pistol. So she put the gun in his face, and he turns around and he lets her know that he has Donahue's manuscript. You know, Donahue is the guy that she actually had there interviewing her. He is writing a book about her. Well, Kato done stole his book. Kato said he was drunk and he was asleep in the drinking trailer, and he was able to get the book or the manuscript out of his hand, and he brought it to Patty so that she could read it. So Patty starts to read some of it, and all of it sounded real good. It was boosting her up, and then it got to one particular line, and it highlighted the fact that she couldn't catch Harriet. Now, and Kato apparently had read some of the manuscript as well, because he recited it to her while she was reading it. So it told her, even as good and as big as she was, it made a comment like her trigger finger was shaky and she couldn't catch Harriet. And of course, Patty didn't like that too much. Matter of fact, she got mad and threw the book at Kato, and she told him to get out. Well, Kato begins to tell her, he says, you just forget about trying to break the black rose and catch her, which is Rosalie, of course. He said, but instead focus on the queen, Harriet. Show her that she's just another runaway nigger, and that she should be a footnote in your story, not the other way around. So right now, what it was looking like at that particular point in the book, that Patty was the footnote in her own story, and the book had become about Harriet Tubman. So Patty said, now that's easier said than done. And then Kato reminds her, he says, now while we came here because you knew that Harriet was working in the area. So at this point, Kato is looking like Kato is on Patty's side. He's trying to help her. Of course, we know he's trying to get his freedom. But yeah, he's helping her out at this point. And then Kato says, when she tells him that, well, she says, it's easier said than done. He says, well, we came here because you know that Harriet is working in this area. And Patty says that there was a map of all the safe houses on the Underground Railroad route that would really help. And so Kato tells her that there is a map. And he says he knows of a man that was in prison once that actually wrote a song on the prison wall. And he's walking outside when he's saying, and she gets up and she follows him. And he starts to tell her that the song, he says it's before the man died in prison, he done wrote this song on the wall. And he said each verse was a step along the way leading to freedom up north. And at this point, they show you that Kato and Patty are standing on the banks of the Kentucky River. Or in Kentucky somewhere. They're standing on the river in Kentucky. And so Patty tells Kato to sing a little bit of that song to her because he's reciting some of the lyrics to it. And she says, sing it to me. And so that's when the actual theme song that we hear every week when Underground comes on, it starts to playing. That theme song is the map of the Underground Railroad, and they're playing it real slow. And so there you go. That's the song, and that's what you hear. And then the episode of Underground officially comes on, because this is where all the credits and everything start coming up. Okay, so when it comes on, then when it comes back on, then you see Lil James. He at the big house standing in front of a mirror getting dressed by one of the other slaves, or by one of the slaves, because James at this point is not a slave. Suzanne done adopted him as her child, more or less. And it's Christmas time. It's Christmas Day, as a matter of fact. And so when she gets through dressing him, he hears all kind of noises and strains and huffing and puffing going on in the other room. And he goes over and he sees a maid in the next room trying to get Rosa dressed. And she's trying to put this real tight corset on Rosalie. Now, we know Rosalie is very pregnant at this point, and it's very painful for her. But this lady is insisting that Miss Suzanne wants her to be dressed, and she wants her to pull that stomach in real tight. She's getting Rosalie dressed like she used to be dressed back when she was working in the big house. So she's doing this, and she's struggling and straining, trying to get this over that girl's stomach. And little James looks into the room, and he just stands there. He stares at Rosa, and Rosa looks back at him. She mean mugging him. And so it's a really strange energy that passes between the two of them. At this point, you're wondering if little James feels kind of bad for what he has done. But anyway, so the next thing they show is Steen. Steen is, last week she ran into August Pullman. Well, Steen is out on a raft with August Pullman. They're on this barge in the middle of a river. And there's August Pullman and Smoke, of course. And because I was wondering what happened to Smoke, but he was actually there with August Pullman. And Smoke feels like they should be on land traveling because it's much faster. By now, he said the Rowe Plantation knows that Steen is missing and they should be looking for her, or they would be looking for her by now. Now, all this time, Steen is sitting there paying attention to him. She's watching them and listening and looking, because we know Steen is real scrupulous, but she was paying attention to everything that they were saying, and she was obviously probably looking for a way to escape from that boat or from this raft they were on. So August, who keeps pulling out his bottle of liquor, he won't talk to Smoke. He's very frustrated. Smoke is anyway. And so Smoke mentions Patty's name and how it would be bad if Steen was stolen or got lost just because him and August couldn't work together. Apparently, August didn't like Smoke because August told him to be quiet. And then Steen asked, she says, "Who is this Patty?" And then I guess she realized suddenly that this is Patty Cannon. And she says, "Patty Cannon?" She said, "What she want with me?" And so Smoke tells Steen that Patty has business with her daughter, meaning Rosalie. And at this point, August said, "You shut your mouth," like that. So Smoke turns around and everything, doesn't say anything else. So at this point, Steen is real concerned now. She's real concerned. They want Rosalie. She's like, oh my God. You could tell she's concerned about it. So then after that scene, they show Georgia. Georgia's having this big sale outside, something like a yard sale, but she's selling baked goods and stuff, cookies and cakes and pies and everything. And there's a big sign up. It's a sale where they're trying to raise money for slavery. And she's got that on the sign, buying things for something. It says for slavery. They're selling things or raising money for slaves or whatever. And there are people walking around looking at all the baked goods, but nobody's really buying anything. See, what done happened is word done got out that she's really black and that she's been passing. And so people are looking at her and pointing at her, and a group of women turn around and look at her and they go, there she is, just whispering and gossiping about her and everything. And they acting all funny with her. So while Georgia is walking around looking and feeling all insecure, obviously, Elizabeth shows up from Philadelphia, because they have been, her and the Lawrence boys and Harriet have been in Philadelphia for Harriet to do her speech, which we saw 2 weeks ago. And she walks up to Georgia, and Georgia is extremely glad to see her, of course. And Elizabeth hugs her, and Elizabeth, probably jokingly, she offers to buy all of her desserts. She says anything for the cause. And so her and Georgia hug and embrace each other, and Georgia asks where Harriet is, and Elizabeth tells her that Harriet is in the house resting. Georgia said that Harriet is back to collect money for Noah and Rosa's trip back to Virginia. So while she's telling Elizabeth all of this snooty white woman, who turns out her name is Laney Brash, I think. who knows Elizabeth. Elizabeth hadn't seen her in a long time, but she shows up and she makes all kind of excuses as to why she did not attend John's funeral. But we all know how things were back in those days. She, as a white woman, she probably didn't even want to be affiliated with or associated with any other white person that was a friend to the cause of abolition. So she lied and told, I guess she was lying, but she tells Elizabeth that her and her husband were in India again, and they sorry that they couldn't make it. So she starts complimenting Liz. Now, during this time, Georgia had them walked up too. But this lady compliments Liz on the work that she's doing for the cause, yet she's talking down to and she's ignoring Georgia. It's very obvious that she's not a friend to the cause at all, but yet she keeps talking all this good stuff. The whole time she's telling Liz, I'm so proud of the work that you're doing around here. I mean, just being real snooty and fake is what she was being. And so, you know, and it's at this time that I realized that the irony in this whole situation is that all these people supposed to be friends of the cause. They say they're friends of the cause and that they are against slavery and they hate it. Yet they're mistreating Georgia and they acting all funny simply because they know that she's really black and they won't even support the cause. Not for real. They got lip service, but they're not doing anything. And so you realize that they're not really friends of the cause, okay? So Liz and Georgia try to get her to donate money or to buy something. That's what Georgia said. I mean, this woman has been rude to Georgia this whole time. She understands Georgia working for the cause because, especially considering her connection to the cause. I mean, real rude and nasty. Real rude. So anyway, she starts to tell them when Georgia and Liz ask for a donation, she tells them that she needs her husband's blessing before she can spend any money. So then this lady woman, she starts comparing slavery to the plight of women or white women's suffrage, because we know women's suffrage was a big deal back then. And she actually has the nerve to compare it to. She says she understands because we know how that slavery is because of what women are going through. It's like the plight of women. And this whole time she's talking to Liz, Liz is looking disgusted and like, this heifer, like she want to call her heifer the whole time she was standing up there listening to her. So then she invites Liz to tea one day. She said, you must come and have tea with me. And she says, just you. She makes it a point to tell her not to bring Georgia with her. And so eventually they say their goodbyes and she walks away. Liz is standing there just completely disgusted with this woman, which we know the state of mind that Liz is in because her husband has been killed and she's been bitter ever since. Okay? She's real vigilant at this point. So then they show Cora. Cora was the house slave back at the big house in Macon. We know from, if you remember last episode, Rosalie and Noah had sent her back to the house. She was supposed to go check things out and she was supposed to, part of the plan was for her to either bring James back to the stables with her before dinner or she was going to come back and give them a report, but she never came back. So what happened was last week, Rosalie started getting nervous because it was midnight and she felt like Cora had turned on her and Noah. And that's when Rosalie got up and decided she had to do something on her own. And that's how they wound up in this situation that they're in now because the plan changed. Okay, so Cora finally shows up the next day in the stables. Noah is in there hiding, of course. And he jumps out, he grabs Cora, and he tries to choke her because he's mad. And he wants to know why she didn't come back the other day like she said she would. Cora starts fussing at him. She want to know why they didn't stick to the plan. She said, I shouldn't have never got involved with you. I shouldn't have never let y'all drag me into this mess. Noah tells her that Rose went ahead with another plan because she thought that Cora had betrayed them. Well, Cora explains that she got called to help. She got called to go help out in the cookhouse by Miss Suzanne. So she couldn't come back. Like I said, Cora is mad too. And she regrets getting involved and helping them this whole time. She said, I shouldn't have let y'all drag me into this mess. And she says she thinks that they are crazy for coming back there while Rosalie is pregnant. And everything gets quiet. And then she realizes that Noah didn't know. And she says, you didn't know, did you? And he didn't. And he tells her that his plan is to get Rosa back. He said, I got to get her back. And his plan, she said, how you going to do that? That ain't going to be an easy thing to do. He said, well, we're going to have to take the mistress in order to own the big house. He's going to have to take her over. So we're going to have to capture the mistress. And she said, that's going to be a hard thing to do. And he said, well, we're going to have to own the big house. Take her, we'll own the big house. And he needs some help from somebody on the inside to do that. So that's he said, once we get the mistress, we can take over the big house. Okay? That's his plan. But he's going to need help from some people on the inside. So It's Christmas Day, and the mistress is in the house playing the piano. And what she's been doing is she's been literally pitting her son, I think his name is TR, against little James. And she's been doing that by treating James better. She buys James a saddle. While the little boy TR is sitting there going through his gifts, he finds that he's getting clothes and outfit. But then little James goes up under the tree and he discovers a saddle. And that's when the mistress tells him that he got a new pony coming. He's like, I got my own horse. And she's like, yes. So she done bought her son clothes and she done bought little James a horse. And so, of course, her son TR is mad about it. He's like, you bought him a horse? And so the mistress tells him that he could have had a new pony if he hadn't been rolling around in the dirt like a nigger. And she said, you should have been a good little boy like James. My James has been a good little boy. Oh, she's something fierce. She's going against her own son just to follow through with this plan that she's got with James. Because we all know that she's not doing James like this because she likes him or loves him. She's got a mission, and I think she's got a lot of reasons for why she's treating James better than she's treating her son. But we'll probably get into that later on too. So Rosa comes in with this tray of cookies, and she stands and she waits while there's another slave in the room as well. You know, slaves were expected to stand still and just wait until the people, the masters and the mistress told them when to move. And so they were in there doing that. And Rosa is watching and she mean mugging James. She looking at him, and the mistress watching and mean mugging Rosa. She looking back and forth trying to see what's going on. She's scoping out the place, the mistress is. And so eventually the mistress gets up and she slaps the other black girl and looks at Rosalie and tell her ain't nothing changed. She said, you need to know your place. And then she slapped the young girl again. And she's doing this to get Rosalie in order, making Rosalie feel bad. And so she tells Rosalie told her to get out of there. She said, you know you're supposed to be in that cookhouse. She said, ain't nothing changed. You supposed to be working in the cookhouse. And she tells Rosalie, as Rosalie getting ready to leave, she says, make sure that you eat, because I like my property nice and healthy. Ooh, that's a mean, nasty wench. I don't know who the worst, Suzanne or Patty Cannon. Ooh, mean, nasty. But she gonna get what's coming to her though. So then they show Elizabeth. She's in the house talking to Harriet. And Elizabeth is worried about what's going to happen if they don't get that train money for Noah, because apparently they didn't make enough money at that yard sale or whatever kind of sale that was that Georgia was holding. Georgia had even told her earlier, she said, you notice not a lot of, well, Elizabeth noticed that there were not a lot of goods and stuff in the house. And and Georgia told her, well, people ain't buying stuff right now because of the raid. Well, basically, they done found out that Georgia Lee, like I said, is a black woman, and people don't want to have a whole lot to do with her. Okay? It's ridiculous. It's really kind of ironic that these people call themselves friends of the cause, but they don't want to have anything to do with Georgia. Okay, so she's talking to Harriet, and she's like, how are we going to get that train money for Noah and Rosa? And Harriet said, and she told her she's wondering what's going to happen if they don't get the ticket money. And Harriet tells her that it'll add about a week to their journey. And there's not many houses on the route, any of these safe houses. She said there's not many safe houses on the route that they'll be traveling. And so Elizabeth is fussing about that Laney Brisk woman that she ran into. And she said it's people like her who always say they feel bad for slaves, but they never help out. Liz says that she's tired of begging, quote unquote, good people to help. And so then Harriet tells her a story about when she had to go back in the day. She had to go back when she had to go back and get her father, because we all know that Harriet Tubman went and stole or helped a lot of slaves run away. And her parents were some of them. So she was telling her story about how when she was in New York and she was broke, she didn't have any money, but she needed to go back and get her daddy. And she said her daddy sent her to this man to ask him for money in the state of New York. And so she said she went to the man. He was supposed to be an abolitionist. And she asked the man for $20. And the man refused her at first because he said that $20 was too much for him. So Harriet would refuse to accept that response from him. So she sat in that man's office day and night. Say she was watching other people going in and out of the office, but she wouldn't move. She said she was waiting because she believed in the Lord and she believed in his plan. So finally, So after she sat there for a while, she told Elizabeth, she said, finally, I got my $20. Well, Elizabeth said, so he finally gave it to you, right? Because Elizabeth figured if she was sitting in there all that time, eventually the man just gave in. And Harry didn't say he gave in. Harry says, finally, I got my $20 and then some. And I immediately knew when Harriet said that, Harriet stole that $20. She stole some money at this point because she never agreed. See, I've learned to pay very close attention to the words Harriet say because she speaks not in code, but she talks in between lines. You have to read between the lines with her sometime. And she said, no, I got my money and then some. And I realized she probably stole that money. Like I said, Liz thinks the man finally gave in to her and gave her that money. But baby, Harriet took that. Okay? So Harriet tells Liz that the Lord is on our side, but we have to do our part. And Liz says, but I don't know what my part is. So Harriet asks her when was the last time that she prayed. And then it changes scene, and the next thing you see is Noah and Cora. They're outside at the big house, and they're hiding behind something like a picket fence, and they're watching the other field slaves. They're playing some type of game that looks like hockey. And they're trying, Noah and Cora are trying to find slaves that would help them carry out their escape plan. You begin to realize that Noah is watching them trying and getting information from Cora. Cora is telling him the story on each of them, where they came from, what type of people they are, because he's scoping them out. He's trying to scout some help. Okay, so Cora also tells Noah about a feast that the mistress is going to have that night for her what she called her most profitable slaves, or her best slaves, her best niggas, or something. She's going to give a dinner for them. And so Noah said, well, you got to be careful not to pick the wrong slave. And that's when Cora says, but who can you trust? She said, you can't even trust family. And it's like she was really saying, it really don't matter which one, because you can't really trust nobody. Okay? You don't know who you can trust. But they're out there trying to recruit somebody to help them to do what they have to do. Okay? I mean, this episode is getting better and better, okay? So then they show August. He's still pulling out that pint jar, drinking his liquor. And Steen is staring at him, licking his lips. You could tell she wants some of that drink real bad. Because we know Steen likes to have her glass of brown liquor every now and then. So she licking her lips and she looking at him and she wants some. She want to get her a swig too. Bad. And then she looks at him. She says, can I have some? And he ignores her and he closes his bottle and he puts it in his back pocket. So then somebody starts shooting at them. And they actually shoot at them twice while they're on this boat. And the second time, Steen tries to make her escape by jumping into the river. Smoke has to jump in and save her because she started hollering and yelling. It's obvious that she can't swim. And he's like, how you going to jump in the water trying to escape and you can't even swim? But then they make it to dry land. And he drags over to the ground. In some kind of way, he finds a vial of that indigo drug on her. Steen done smuggled out a bottle of that drug that she had back at the rope plantation that they had gotten rid of. She kept her one. And so he finds it and he takes it from her. And he gives it to August. And he says, well, that's a good thing because as a fiend, if she starts fiending, she'll go right back to you. You know, being a drug addict and everything. She's going to stay close to him because she's a junkie. So at this point, Smoke ties her up. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, who's shooting at her? Is it really the people from the rope plantation? Have they caught up with them that quick? I'm just wondering who was shooting at them. Probably so. But they don't ever show or confirm whether or not it's the people from the rope plantation. But anyway, it dawned on me too. At that point, Steen jumped into that water on purpose. She wanted to get to the land because she wanted to be caught, obviously, by the rope planters. So the rope plantation people. So that became obvious that she did it on purpose. Okay. So then they show little James. He's out with his horse, walking his horse. He's feeding his horse and everything. And then Noah walks out of the woods. And you hear James say, who's there? Who are you? And Noah says, it's me, Noah. And so the little boy looking at him and Noah said, yeah, you know me. And he tells him, Noah tells little James that baby that Rosa's carrying is his, which makes little James an uncle and that they're all family. And James said, Miss Susanna been taking care of him. She his family. So Noah reminds him that the mistress, or Susanna, was the very one that caused Rosa to get beat by Bill to protect him when they were in front of that wagon. If y'all remember last season, like the first or second episode, the man came through with the wagon, and James and TR were out there playing, and they made a mistake and knocked the man's wagon over. And so the mistress told Bill to whoop little James, but Rosalie came out and jumped in it, and Bill actually beat or whipped Rosalie. Well, that's why her arms were all messed up. So he reminds little James, do you remember when she was trying to protect you and Rosalie got whooped on your behalf? And that was because of Miss Suzanne. She's the one that caused that. So James asked him, well, why didn't you help protect her? Why didn't you stop Bill from doing that? And so Noah stops and he thinks about it, and he tells James, he said, I'm going to get him back for that. I plan on getting him back for that. And he said, I ain't going to let nobody stop me, not even you. So he asked James, he said, if you are either you part of this family or you not. So little James got a decision to make. He said, either you with this family or you not. So then they show a scene where Liz is sitting in church. Harriet has sent them to a church in Covington, Virginia, which is on the other side of a river. Harriet has told them that this church is pro-slavery. And they actually have a small printing press that they run in the basement of the church where they publish pro-slavery literature. And the church links slavery to godliness, because the preacher said something like, as we hear today on Christmas Sunday, and the reason why Harriet sent them to this church because it's Christmas and it's going to be a lot of people and they're going to be taking up a lot of money. And so you hear the preacher say, on this day while we celebrate our pale Savior. So yeah, it became apparent that they were that kind of church, okay? So then, like I said, you see Elizabeth sitting up in church, and she's just looking around, looking all crazy, like she up to something, baby. Got this vicious look in her eyes and everything. Suddenly, somebody gets up, and the two ushers, I guess, get up, the men, to collect the money. In my church, they deacons. Deacons the one get up to collect the money. So you see these two men with this big box on these poles that get up to collect all the offerings from the people in the church. And while they're doing that, Elizabeth's just looking around and everything. But you hear, because they're showing flashbacks of Harriet having a conversation with them, telling them what moves they need to make, and they discussing their plan at the church, but they're showing Elizabeth in the church at the same time that they're showing scenes from when Harriet was talking to him. But you hear Georgia say, we're going to need a distraction in order to take the money, because the reason why they went there was to steal money from the church. And that's when Harriet cites this scripture, and it was based on a scripture from Corinthians chapter 10, verse 9. 1 Corinthians 10 and 9 to be exact, where he talked about serpents and snakes. So what they are going to do is they're using snakes to be a distraction. You see somebody sitting in the church, I'm assuming it was Georgia, with a bag full of different types of snakes. And she opens the bag and drops them out onto the floor. And then Liz gets up and she walks out. So as they're walking out, people scared and screaming and running because these snakes crawling all over the floor. I'm talking about different kinds of snakes, yellow snakes, red snakes, poisonous snakes, non-poisonous snakes, just disgusting, you know. And so Elizabeth and Georgia are running out with this box of money. And they almost didn't make it because they tripped and almost fell. Almost knocked all the money out of the box. But the preacher walks out behind him while people are running out in all directions. He has this long stick in his hand. He was about to hit them. And he said, stealing from the Lord on his day. So Georgia, baby, she waxed gangster. Now, y'all know Georgia used to claim she was non-violent. Well, she ain't like that no more. Ever since these people been mistreating her, since they found out she was black, Georgia pulled a pistol out, cocked a pistol, and pointed at that man. She told him, be quiet, turn around, or she gonna show him a real sinner. And so that preacher looked up and he turned around and he ran his little fat self back in the church at that point. And Harriet told him that there ain't nothing wrong with a little sin for the greater good. Boy, I said, look at Georgia, just gangster. I mean, she really did surprise me in that role. I was so proud of Georgia at that point. I said, go ahead, Georgia girl. So then they show August and Smoke. They walk and steam through this funky swamp, this nasty swamp water area. And August is still sipping his whiskey because we all know he's an alcoholic. And Steve, every time he's sipping, Steve look up at him because she wants some and she want it bad, honey. So Steve begins to try to talk to August. She asks him what happened to Rosalie. And she also asks him about his son. But he don't answer her. He turns around and he asks her what happened to her two boys. Where are they? Okay. He wanted to know. He wouldn't answer her about his, but he asked her Where your sons? What about your 2 boys? So still, Steen keeps trying to escape. She keep on trying to run away from him, okay? And she tried to leave a trail of leaves or cloth or something behind. She was tearing up what looked like some cloth, but I'm not sure. But she wanted the road people to be able to find her, or if she wanted to get back to the river, she could. So she was leaving trails behind her, and Smoke discovered it. He saw what she had in her hand, and so August asked her, he said, how you know that the road people won't do something worse to her if they find her? And she tell them that the road people don't have no ambitions for her kin, meaning Rosalie. They ain't after Rosalie and them. They just want her. So she's saying she'd rather go back to the road plantation than to be with them and help them lead them back to Rosalie. Okay? So Smoke threatens. He tells her, he said, I don't care what Patty Cannon want with you. He said, if you try to run again, he gonna kill her himself, is what he told her. Okay? So then they go back to Rosalie. Rosalie is in the old master's office, and she dusting around the lampshade. Around the lanterns and everything, the fixtures on the wall and stuff. And so Suzanne's son, TR, comes in the room and finds her. He want to know why she in there. He hollering at her, what you doing in here? And he said, you supposed to be in the cellar getting wine. That's what he thought. Rosalie said, no, I ain't supposed. He said, Rosalie reminds him that the master is the both of their father, and that it wasn't wine that she was supposed to be getting. It was brandy, and it wasn't none down there in the basement. So she was up there. She made it like she was up there looking for some. So the boy says, I don't believe you. So he calls for the other slave, Hattie. So he turns around. When Hattie comes into the room, he turns around to slap Hattie, just like his mama did, the girl. But at the point where he raises his hand to slap her, Rosalie grabs his arm and tells him to hit her if he wants to hit somebody. Well, he threatens to have her whipped for touching him. And James comes in and he yells, stop. So TR tells him that he can't tell him what to do. And at this point, James calls for Miss Suzanne. He says, mother! And the boy tells him, shut up. He got scared. He didn't want James to tell on him because he already know that if James tell on him, the mama going to take up for James. So anyway, James run. The little white boy leaves, and James tells Hattie to go, and he closes the door so he can talk to Rosalie alone. And he asked Rosalie, he said, why did you even come back here? And she said she came back for him because he's her brother and that she loves him. And he tells her, no, she tells him, I ain't gonna let nobody hurt you, because he asked her, he said, it's because it's your fault that James is dead. So he's blaming her, for, not James, that Sam is dead. James tells her, it's your fault that Sam is dead and that Steen is gone. And so Rosalie tells him, I ain't gonna let nobody hurt you. And he tells her that he ain't worried about nobody hurting him. He said everything was fine before she came back there. He said what he's afraid of is her making things bad again. And of course this hurts Rosa's feeling. So Rosa leans down and she starts pulling on his clothes, and she tells him, all this stuff you got, you acting like this your mama. He said, that ain't nothing but a lie. You living a lie, child. You shouldn't be pretending. She said it's not a good thing. She's letting him know you pretending like she's your mother is not a good thing for him. And James tells her at this point, he says, I saw Noah today, and he said he wanted me to tell you that he's on his way to come back and get you. And James tells her, he said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here because the Makins is his family now. And he walks off. And Rosa is crying a little bit. Tears are welling up in her eyes. So it's a sad moment for her because she loves her brother and she wants her brother to go with her. But her brother is happy. And I knew last episode that that child wasn't going nowhere. He's being treated too good. He don't understand how messy Miss Suzanne is. He don't understand what her motives are. He just knows that he's being treated good and that he's getting what he wants. And that's all. He's a child. That's all he can think about. So anyway, and Rosa doesn't understand that either, apparently. So anyway, he leaves her there with her feelings hurt. So then they show Steen is outside again. So while Smoke is sitting up there asleep, her and August have this real deep heart-to-heart talk about their kids. She went back to the question that he asked her earlier. He asked her what her 2 sons were. She said, you asked me earlier about my children. She tells him about Sam. She tells him that Sam was her favorite. He was her heart. He was a very special child to her. And she says James, and she says James is being raised by the master. She let him know that Sam had been hung and that James was still at home being raised by Mistress Suzanne. And she said after Sam's death, she grew real angry and bitter and cold. She said, but she blames herself for James, what's going on with James, the fact that he's with the mistress. And she winds up telling August that she's the one that killed Master Tom. So August starts telling Steen how he had Rosa in his hand. You know, basically she got away from him. He said his land was paid for and he would have just walked away from all this mess. He had Rosalie. All he had to do was turn her in, get his money, and he was getting ready to go on about his business. He was going to retire basically from the slave catching business. So he took his eyes off his son during that time when his son got hurt by Rosalie. Now, he doesn't tell Steen that Rosa hurt his son. He kept that to himself. And as he's talking about his son, how he wanted to teach him things and train him how to be a man, he said he was selfish. And he tells Steve, he said, I ain't never had nothing. I never had anything. And you knew that last season. He was pitiful. He was real pitiful. And the black man that was there with him was actually his friend because August Pullman didn't own any slaves. Okay? So he was just letting her know his land was paid for and he was about to walk away from all of this SHIT is what he said. So I kind of felt sorry for August at this point. So then, at this point, he finally gives Steen some of his liquor. She took that bottle and turned it up like it was the best thing since heaven. Like heaven in a bottle, baby, because she been wanting some all day. So Steen has a little bit more conversation with him, and she gives him some words of wisdom about your kids. She said, you got to love your kids, and she says the only way you can fail your kids is when you give up trying to do anything for them. So she, you know, she has a good heart-to-heart talk with him. So after that, they show the big Christmas dinner that's going on at the boarding house. Oh, these black and white people, the Lawrence boys, Harriet is there, George is there, everybody's serving food, they eating good, they drinking good, just having a good time, laughing, talking, being merry. And that's when Liz comes in and she's finally made it back from the church. I don't know how in the world Georgia beat her home, but apparently Georgia beat her back to the boarding house. So, Harriet asked Liz, she said, how was church? And she said it was fine. And so Georgia sits down and she starts telling Liz, she says, the church money that we got, it was just enough to get the train tickets for Noah and Rosalie. And Liz is like, okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. But she's still worried. She still got this look of worration. That's what I call it, worration on her face. And she asked, she says, well, how are we going to keep the post open, meaning the boarding house? She said, what are we going to do? Because we ain't getting no money. How are we going to keep this boarding house open? And so Georgia tells her, she says, we'll figure out something. She says, it'll always be a safe haven for runaways. As long as it's standing, it'll always be a safe haven. And so Liz, you see that she gets some comfort from this, but she's still looking very worried and confused and concerned. And you hear that loud whistle noise going on, that same sound you heard when she was sitting in front of that courthouse after her husband was killed. It's that same loud noise, and I think that kind of is symbolic of the fact that when somebody is talking to her, she tunes them out and she's thinking and planning her next move. Okay, that's what I think that sirens means. So then they show they're back at Steen and August now. So while August is asleep, Steen is asleep too. And she's grunting. Evidently, she's having somewhat of a bad dream. So she wakes up and Smoke is sitting up awake at this point. And she hears him talking. He says, what do you think you're doing? So she tells Smoke that she has to relieve herself. She got to pee, in other words. So he's looking at her crazy. And she's like, you ain't gonna let me go? She's like, either that, you want me to pee right here? And he's like, I can't let you go because it's too foggy out here. I can't see you. And she said, well, it's a good thing you got me tied up out here like that. So finally he lets her go. And because he got this rope on her. And when she goes off to pee, Steen's so smart. Yet again, she tries to run away and she ties the rope to a tree. And he realizes that it's been tied to something and it ain't her. So she runs again. She getting up, boom, 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 running. And so then he starts yelling. August gets up and both of them run behind her and Smoke catches her and he starts beating on her, slapping on her, kicking her, throwing her down, and he's doing everything he can to try to subdue her. And then he slams her up against the tree. Now when he did this, for some reason August grabs Smoke and starts beating him up. We all know August is super strong. He'd have been shot, stabbed, and he's still living. You just can't kill him, okay? But he starts fighting Smoke, beating him up. And he winds up killing him. He actually puts an axe or a knife through the man's throat. And then he shoots him. So he didn't like Smoke at all, apparently. Apparently he could not stand him. So Steen is laying on the ground. And August is standing up in front of her. And he actually gives her back her drugs. I'm like, he giving her drugs. And so she takes it and she's glad to get it. And she pointed in her cloth. Because one of her arms is hurt or whatever. But you can't really tell that at that point. But August actually goes behind her and he grabs her like he's about to hug her, and he takes her arm and he cracks it. You hear a cracking noise. I was like, yikes, oh my God. Now when I heard this noise the first time, I thought he was doing something to her. I said, did he break her arm to keep her from running or something? I really thought he was trying to hurt her. I had to watch the show twice. It finally dawned on me that he was actually setting her arm back in place. Steen had dislocated her arm when Smoke slammed her up against that tree. I was so scared and mad and hurt when I saw him do that. But I realized what he was doing, and I'm like, whoosah, he was helping her at this point. Because at that point, I was like, I didn't know what to think of August. Because my whole mindset about August from the beginning is that August is not really an evil person like the rest of these white people. I felt like August had a heart and a conscience, especially when I saw his black friend. I felt like August really at some point was going to help them, and he was going to wind up on their side. And so when I saw him crack her arm, it threw me for a minute, and then I realized what he was doing. Okay. So after that, it changes from that scene. They show Noah. He's back at Bill's cabin. He's sitting up in Bill's house, the overseer, the one that tried to rape Rosalie, the one that Rosalie tried to kill, and the one from last episode who branded Rosalie. He was sitting at Bill's cabin because he said he was going to get him, didn't he? And when Bill comes stumbling in drunk like he always does, he sees Noah. Noah gets up and he looks at him and he's like, what are you doing here? And so Noah grabs him and they start fighting and tussling, rolling all around, or not rolling, but they start tumbling all across the room. So Noah winds up grabbing a hold of him and he strangles Bill to death. Noah told y'all he was going to get him. He told y'all he was going to get him, but he strangles him and it looks like Bill is dead, and so Bill, he drops him to the floor. Now, we don't know for sure if Bill is dead or not. You know, he done been jugged in the jugular vein by Rosalie, and he lived. So, I don't know, but I hope he's dead. I really do. Noah leaves him for dead. The next thing you see is Liz shows up at Laney's house. This is another gangster moment, honey. Liz shows up at Laney's house. She rings her doorbell. Laney opens the door. Liz has that box in her hand. She told her she came to collect that donation that Laney said she wishes she had the last time she saw her. And she said, yes, I want that donation that you said you would give if your husband let you. So Liz looks at her because she done, you know, confronted her. Now Liz tells her that she wants her to give cash, jewelry, whatever she got valuable. And Laney tells her, she says, I'm not going to give to the slave cause. She just flat out tells her, my family's in here, I'm just not going to do it. And so that's when Liz starts to threaten her and bribe her. She tells Laney, she said, I know about all of your escapades with this man, that man, and other men. And she's like, so what are you talking about? She said, I tell everybody everything I know. So apparently Laney is a whore. And Liz knows about it. And Liz will tell all her business. She told her, I'll come back here every month and tell everything. I'll tell everything every month if I have to. She said, I'll come back here every month and threaten you if I have to. So I guess she must have gotten what she wanted from her. But after that conversation, you know that Liz had the upper hand after that. Okay. So then they show Steen again after this incident, after he done killed Smoke and everything, and he put her arm back in place. Steen is laying out on the boat, apparently asleep, while August is actually rowing the boat, and they are in the middle of the river. It's late at night. She wakes up, she looks around, and she realizes that they're headed back down south to the Macon plantation. Obviously, she looks at him, she said, we headed south, aren't we? So we know they on their way to the Macon plantation too, but ain't gonna be, anyway, let me hush, I'm ahead of myself. Anyway, so then they start showing flashback scenes of when Cora and Noah were watching the field slaves playing that game they were playing. I call it Negro hockey, because that's what it looked like, y'all. I'm sorry, but that's what it looked like. So when Noah was trying to pick the different slaves that he wanted to help him, he was out there trying to recruit. Y'all remember that scene? Well, they were showing flashbacks. And then you see the mistress and all her best niggas sitting at her family table, at the dining room table, getting ready to eat this fancy dinner. And all the other slaves, there are slaves sitting at the table. Of course, there's James at the table, TR at the table, Suzanne at the table. And the slaves that sitting at the table are some of those very ones that were out there playing Negro hockey. Well, Rosa and the other house slaves are serving them, of course. They're bringing in food and standing around waiting to do whatever they're supposed to do. And it becomes apparent that something is up and that the slaves are playing something, because everybody got this sneaky look on their face. They looking around looking crazy. Rosalie looking crazy. And one guy, the one that Noah had noticed in the scenes when he was back watching the slave, one of the guys he said he knew was real quiet, and he looked down. That's actually Rosalie's husband in real life. That's a little sidebar. He was the quiet slave that was out there with them. But anyway, sidebar. Like I said, you could tell that they are planning something. So Noah must have picked his team. So the mistress is giving this celebration speech on all the events that's taking place over the year. Because remember now, at this point, only about 6 or 7 months has passed. It has not been that long. But she's talking about all the things that's happened over the past year, good and bad. As if she's this CEO at a big company and she's giving a pep talk to her factory workers. You know, like that show that comes on, is it Auld? The show where the bosses pick people that work for their company to give them awards at the end. I can't think of the name of it, but anyway, she's giving them a pep talk and everything. And she mentions Tom and how he was too weak for the demands of the South. Tell my God rest his soul, because she thinks that Master Tom hung himself, but we all know that steam killed him. She was saying he was too weak for the demands of the South, meaning the slave system, and but that he'll be remembered as a planter. So a few of the slaves were sitting there looking at her real lovingly, and they were just smiling at her and everything. And you could tell who wasn't on Noah's side, because you had little James, and then another slave was sitting there smiling at her and everything. So they probably didn't even know what was going to happen. So then the next thing you know, Noah busts up in the room, and he got this gun pointed at everybody. And he tell Rose, he said, Rose and James, let's go. James. And he pointed the gun at Miss Suzanne. So James stood up like he was finna do something. He shouted, don't hurt her. Talking about Suzanne. Don't you hurt Miss Suzanne. So then next thing you see is Rosalie took her silver platter and she popped James upside his apple head and he fell out. I had to watch that scene like 5 times because it was so funny to me. The way she took that pan and boop, then bopped James upside his head. I was too tickled. Too tickled. So we knew that James was going to be a problem because he talking about don't hurt her. He had already said he wasn't going nowhere. So they knocked him over his head. But I don't know if that was a good idea. Because if he wasn't ready to go, what kind of problems is he going to cause them when they on their way back up north? I just don't see it being a good thing. He is really going to be a problem. Okay? So anyway. So you see Noah carrying James outside over his shoulder because the boy's still knocked out. Cora is outside waiting with the horse and wagon. She's sitting up on the horse and wagon getting ready to, you know, drive the horse and everything. So Rosa makes her way out. The mistress runs out hollering that James is her son now. So when she's doing this, Rosalie got her gun pulled on her too. And so then Noah walks up and he takes the gun from Rosalie and he takes his turn holding the gun on the mistress. And so Rosalie said, I'll be right back. Wait a minute. So the mistress' real son, TR, he comes out holding a rifle and he shouts at them and tells him to let his mama go now. So he starts, he cocks the gun, getting ready to shoot him, and Noah shoots him in his leg. And I guess when he shot the boy in his leg, the boy's gun must have went off and he made a mistake and shot his mama in the shoulder. So Miss Suzanne done been shot in the shoulder. She's sitting on the ground. And he done been shot in the leg and he's crying. And so the mistress tells them that no matter where they go, her catchers are going to find them. And so Rosalie walks up with this lantern and she tells her, she said, ain't nobody going to be dragged back nowhere because there won't be a place to come back to. And they show Rosalie throws a well-lit lantern into the front window of the house. And they show the flashback scene when Rosalie was back in the master's office dusting when TR caught her. She had unscrewed something from up on the wall. She was unscrewing one of the light things, fixtures up on the wall. She was doing something and we knew that then. But baby, that whole house, when she threw that lantern in that house, the whole house went up in flames. Quick too. It's like in a matter of seconds, the whole house was on fire. It just, so whatever she did in that room caused that fire to go spread much quicker. I don't know if the other slaves got out or not. I'm assuming that they did because they knew what was going to happen. When they got Miss Suzanne out the house and when the TR left the house, they must have they probably ran out the back door. But all I know is that whole house burnt down. And Miss Suzanne's laying out there hollering, no! Crying, yelling. You know what? I couldn't even feel sorry for her. Everything that Rosalie did, she deserved. She better be glad she's still alive. But she deserved that. She deserved it. When they burnt that house down, I could not feel sorry for her because she was a low down, evil woman. Now I'm just waiting on them to get Patty. But see, Suzanne is still alive. She gonna be a problem because she gonna have the law on them. We know that it's gonna happen. She better be glad they didn't kill her. But I didn't, you know, I wonder why in the world was Miss Suzanne there by herself trying to control all them slaves anyway. There was no white man there with her, but she did say she had catchers. There was Bill there, so she did have help. I forgot all about them. So never mind on that, okay? So anyway, this house burning down, and Rosalie and them, they just ride off in the night. She looking well pleased when she up on the wagon. She look up at Noah. Noah looks at her, and she looks well pleased. She done burnt that house to the ground, baby. So they got James knocked out on the back of the wagon, Cora driving the wagon, and they two on their way wherever they're gonna go. Okay, and from that scene they go back to the boarding house. Okay, we're at the end now, y'all. They go back to the boarding house. Georgia tells Liz as she's walking down the hall that they got some new cargo, which means they got another runaway slave there. And she said he's jumpy and he seems to have been through a lot. So she said she had to let him in through the back window or something. So she opens that door that leads down to like the tunnels of the house. And guess who it is? None other than that Cato. Now this concerns me. I refuse to believe that Cato is there as a friend. I doubt if he's there on friendly terms. I just don't trust it. I would hope that he is. He looks all disheveled and beat up and like he done had a hard time. But I just don't know. You just never can tell with Cato. What y'all think? Y'all think Cato was there on good? Do you think he escaped from Patty, or do you think he was just there to help Patty? Because he was already singing a song to Patty, telling Patty how to get up north and how to get to a safe haven. So I just wonder, was he friend or foe? We'll find out. It's only like 3 more episodes in the season. I hate to see it go off. It's good. It's really good. This is good, y'all. This is good. This is one of the best series I've ever seen. I've got like 4.5 pages of notes back and front. All right. And I gave y'all the overall gist of it. I wasn't going to try to remember every single word that these people said on this show. But y'all got the gist of it. Y'all got the gist. So right now at this point, Rosalie, Noah, Cora, and James are on their way, hopefully, to freedom. Then you got Steen and August, who have bonded. A strange bond between the two of them have developed, and you wonder what's going to happen. They on their way back to the Macon plantation. Okay? I highly doubt that he's going to encounter Patty Cannon again, because he done killed her man, Smoke, unless he's going to do something to Patty. I believe, my prediction is that Patty is ultimately going to wind up being arrested for the illegal slave activity that she's been involved in. If the story writers of Underground stick to the facts, in real life, Patty Cannon went to prison. They sentenced her to death by hanging, but she winds up dying before they hung her. So I don't know if they're going to change the script to, or flip, the story, or they're going to allow her to be captured. But I believe she's going to be arrested for what she's been doing. They're going to probably have other enemies, but I believe Patty going to be arrested. Yeah, so that's what's going on with them. Elizabeth and George and them, and Cato, I don't know. Like I said, Cato is there. There's no telling what's going to happen there. But he's going to be another problem, because Cato right now is mad. He's hurt about what Debbie told him. So when Cato gets angry and mad, he does things. So we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be interesting. I heard that there was some question about whether or not Underground is going to come back next season, because it's not getting the viewership that it was once getting. And I have heard, and the reason for that, a lot of reason why it's not getting the viewership, is because I have heard a lot of people say that they can't stand to keep watching black people and slaves being treated like they're being treated. But Underground is different. It's got a different storyline. It's hard, but it's got a different storyline. It's hopeful. It gives you a lot of hope, and it's exciting. I love it. I love it. And I hope they bring it back. I really hope. I hope another network decides to pick it up if WGN decides to drop it. But it's an excellent, excellent series, and I cannot wait till next week. So anyway, y'all, I done talked enough. It's going on almost an hour. Please leave your commentary in the comment section, and thumbs up this video. I know I said a lot. I ramble all the time. It's what I do. But if you know anything, if you got any insight into what happened on this episode. Oh, by the way, there were some questions. What happened to Suzanne's daughter? She had a teenage daughter. The girl just went upstairs and didn't come back down like Judy on Family Matters did. Girl, she went upstairs one day and just, you never saw her again. So what happened to Suzanne's daughter? What happened to Suzanne's new baby? Did she leave him upstairs in the nursery for the past 6 or 7 months? You don't see him anymore either. It's amazing how they bring people in the script and just write them right out the script. Just amazing. But anyway, y'all take care. Thank you for listening. Yeah, share the video and tell people to subscribe. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.